Hello. Another edition of Meet My Friend with Daddy Porter. I'm Daddy Porter, Greg Washington. Nice to meet you. If this is the first time you see me, I'm here with Chris Sands. He is a podcaster out of Maryland area. He's been doing it for a long time. He's mixed up with all kinds of other media too, beer media. He had his own magazine that we're going to talk about. And I believe he's been doing this for a long ass time. I met Chris at the Beer Bloggers Conference. Another hat tip to that. And without further ado, I'll let Chris tell you who he is and what he's got going on. So let's jump in here real fast. What's up, Mr. Chris Sands?
Not much. How you doing, man?
Cheers. Today, as of our taping, it's the Tuesday and Tuesday afternoon, and anywhere you're at, it's an afternoon. So cheers to having a beer in the afternoon. And jump in and let me know. I before we get to where you're at and what you do now. Where did you love a craft beer? Where, how, and did you find your craft beer love?
So we'll start a little bit before that, because people always find this interesting, that I actually didn't drink at all for about 10 years. Mainly because I had a couple friends that were killed by drunk drivers, and a lot of my other friends couldn't be trusted to be the DD. So I just stopped drinking and I just became the de facto DD. And after a couple of years, drinking didn't appeal to me. And I never really liked beer that much growing up or in my early 20s.
That's hard to believe.
Yeah, no. So the first time I drank, not the first time after not drinking for a while. I was in the Dominican Republic at a resort in Punta Cana, and it was all inclusive. And I was like, there's no way I'm not drinking what I've already paid for. So,
and there was no driving.
Yeah, there was no driving.
Right.
So, and it was with a group of high school friends. It was probably 5 or so years after we graduated. One of our friends was getting married. So there was like 10 of us that all went down and were staying at the resort. And one day, one of my best friends growing up and I went to the swim up bar. Went up. I ordered a drink. I only wanted a rum in it. The guy poured the drink, held the bottle upside down, and started tapping the bottom of it, and said that it was a Dominican little bit. And then it all went downhill from there. So after that, it was when I moved to Frederick, Maryland, right around the same time I moved here, Flying Dog had moved from Colorado to Frederick. And when they first moved here, they weren't following any Maryland laws. I don't even know if they were following the laws they were under in Denver. But basically, you could go to the brewery, take a tour, and then drink as much as you wanted. So a bunch of my friends would go do that like every other weekend. And then as I got to know the people at Flying Dog, and then at the other breweries in Frederick and then throughout Maryland, it's like I just fell in love with the industry.
Yeah, so Flying Dog, can we put a timetable on this? Flying Dog came, I don't remember the move, actually. I just know Flying Dog from East Coast.
End of 2007 into 2008, I believe.
Okay. And
those could be completely wrong, but those are the numbers I'm going with.
Actually, I can look that up while we're talking, but because Flying Dog is I found out when I first got into craft beer that Flying Dog was, mostly an OG, or they started. It's kind of hard to OG, where you put that at.
Yeah.
But, I would say that there were a regional OG around in your area, right? They were one of the first ones that really popped up. 2007. That's 13 years. So.
Yeah, they were
right.
I mean, as soon as they moved here, they were the largest.
Okay.
And then there's a few places that have been around for 20 or so years, but they instantly came in and they were one of the oldest. Because of laws in Maryland, most breweries here are in the 5 or younger years old range.
Gotcha. So So your craft beer life, I should say, started in Flying Dog, is what I'm hearing.
Pretty much, yeah. And it was Old Scratch was the beer that was my gateway beer into craft.
And what's Old Scratch again? I can pull that up.
That is their now defunct amber lager or amber ale. No, it wasn't a lager; it was an amber ale.
Right. So are you still a big fan of Flying Dog, or before we get to your podcast and all that, are you still a big fan of them, or do you feel that they have kind of stayed the same and other people have caught up? Because that's what happens with some of these older ones, I believe.
So I would say they kind of fell behind for a little while, and I think when the larger a brewery it is, the harder it is to try to chase trends, but it's also detrimental to them because you figure like the the craft beer fanatic is a small, a very small vocal minority. So, like Flying Dog sells over 100,000 barrels of beer a year. So they've started dabbling in more of your hype style stuff, like releasing hazies and doing a little bit more of through the tap room. But their tap room sales in comparison to distribution sales are negligible.
Mm. Mm.
So that's a way to say like they're starting to become more relevant with the I'll call like hype breweries, like the places that get all the publicity. So, but they're still more or less like you're just a mainstay craft brewer.
Yeah, and I'm sure name recognition helps them too at this point. And
Yeah.
I don't know, I think from my point of view, being a Midwesterner, Flying Dog remains relevant because they still do quote crazy things, kind of like Dogfish Head. There's that R that they continue to do, like they push the boundaries. What's this one I see here? I still hear about this dumb beer. I call it a dumb beer. I've never had it, but I just laugh. This Obey Ghost. I hear about this beer all the time, or a lot.
Well, if
or someone who's in the Midwest who Flying Dog's not around here. I mean, we get some of them, but they're just not around here to be like that word of mouth. I hear a lot about that.
Yeah, a few years ago, actually, it's probably been a while at this time, they pulled out of a lot of states and shrunk their distribution to where their sales were really strong. And it actually helped skyrocket their growth a little bit by contracting their footprint.
Yeah, and becoming a little bit more scarce. I know you know the name New Glarus, and
yes.
and that is one that uses scarcity, especially I can see it here in Wisconsin, to their advantage. Little people know that they used to distribute to Chicago, and they found it to be too problematic as far as whether, this was early though. This was early before, you know what I mean? Like craft beer really caught on.
Yeah.
They were in the Chicago market, and they just found it to be too problematic for what they wanted to do. So when they concentrated on Wisconsin and said we're only going to sell to Wisconsin, that's when it went.
So they have that strawberry rhubarb beer that is one of my favorite beers I've ever had.
Oh, we'll talk.
Yeah, I love that. Is such a great beer. So many breweries try that flavor and they completely fail at it. But New Glarus, they've done it perfect.
And you weren't the only beer expert person.
Far from an expert.
Well, you drink a lot of beers, you talk in the industry a lot, and you know a lot. I don't care if you can pass a test or not. For me, you're a craft beer quote expert, and that's why I did this. I do it not as disrespect. I do it as I'm pretty sure you don't have any certifications, but again, you're around and you talk and you drink enough beer that to me you're a valuable source for it. So that's you don't get. I don't think you get paid like experts do, but I'm pretty sure on that one. But no, your knowledge base, man, is enough, and for me. So with that being said, how did drinking, I would assume, flights at Dogfish I'm sorry, not Dogfish, Flying Dog, translate to you wanting to talk to people in the industry and wanting to get their word out too, because that's part of when you're a podcaster, you're using your voice to project.
So right around that same time, I started working at the newspaper in Frederick, and one of the owners of the newspaper was also really into craft beer. So him and I started Uncapped as a blog back then. And then every once in a while, I would write something for in the paper or cover an event. So we dabbled in that for a little while. Both of us had kids then at the same time, and it just became a lot of work. So it kind of died for a few years.
Mm-hmm.
But in that time, I got to know a lot of the people in the industry. And actually, Flying Dog has been instrumental early on with the people there introducing me to other people. Mm-hmm. So it was 2000 and I don't even remember. 2006, I think, is when the podcast started. I had been wanting the newspaper to get into podcasting for several years because I've always listened to podcasts because my main job at the newspaper is I work in the IT department. So that was how I would keep track of what's going on and keep track of technology. So at some point, I had made a deal with some friends that if we let them use a room at the newspaper, they would set up their podcasting equipment and they would let us use the equipment in exchange for building a studio. So we built out a studio, and I figured, well, I'll start a craft beer podcast, and no one told me to stop. And it eventually became popular, and now it's sponsored, and we have advertising, so they want me to keep doing it.
Nice. So you clearly have a background in journalism.
I know. I mean, my background's electronic engineering and IT.
Okay.
But I've always been someone that wants to know everything I'm involved with. So when I started at the newspaper in 2007, I just started learning about everything. And then working in the IT department, I get involved with every aspect of the newspaper. So I was basically just learning from my coworkers and just being a curious person.
Right. So 178 episodes later. Is that right?
We'll be
179, right? Podcasts later. We're coming up on our 200th. And this is what so we're talking what, a 5-year span here, or 6-year span?
This will be 4 years this year. There's been a lot of times where we would release more than one episode a week. That count's actually not accurate because we sometimes release like side episodes that we don't make them an official numbered episode of the podcast. So we're actually probably closer to 200.
Nice. In 4 years. Excellent. And that's a labor of love, man. I can relate.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Thankfully people listen, so it makes it worthwhile doing. But it definitely sometimes it's a lot of work.
This is why I like live streaming, man, because I can just meet with you, have a couple conversations, have a beer, and then click end broadcast, and it's cool. But I mean, you have a background, so you had so then you took an IT background basically into the newspaper field, and then when you were in the newspaper field, you pretty much were soaking up all that journalism and all that reporting and the way that they were doing things and all that, because at some point you jumped off and made yourself a magazine.
Well, so it was once the podcast became popular, I was in my the publisher of the newspaper's office one day, and he just asked me what I thought about trying making a print product out of Uncapped, and I was like, yeah, sure, sounds fun. It only lasted, I think we made it a year and a half, It was a free magazine with ad support,
Mhm.
and it was always profitable, but not enough to be worthwhile continuing it with the amount of advertising we were getting in it.
Mm.
So it's on a hiatus now,
Mhm.
possibly to be brought back at some point in a revamped way. But in a way, I was kind of glad it went away, because
Speak.
a magazine is a lot of work, and there were only a couple of us working on it.
Mhm.
And just coming up with the story ideas for every magazine, and then figuring out who I was going to have write what, and then writing myself. I did a lot of the photography for it. And then on top of like all that, doing the podcast, I still have my IT work to do at the newspaper.
And you still married, you got kids and
Yeah.
all. So like,
Yeah.
don't forget that. You know what I mean? So my point is that you can't be running around trying to work 80 hours doing this. I mean, not with a family.
Yeah. So the magazine part, while I was sad to see it go, it was almost a blessing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But you learned a lot, though, I'm sure. And did that help expand your context? Because I was talking to you in pre-production about how I was impressed about when you listen and look at your podcast and you scroll, you don't just see brewers, you see all kinds of people from different areas of the brewing industry. So somehow, I guess one contact led to another, because you said it all started. I keep wanting to say Dogfish. That's because I don't want to remember. Flying Dog, you hanging out there and meeting the industry people there, and that just what exponentially grew as you started doing podcasts and that kind of thing.
So early on, I had the owner. I waited a little while. I wanted to build up at least a tiny audience before I had the owner of Flying Dog on. But I think within the first 10 episodes, he came on. And then I started asking him and a couple other like higher up employees at Flying Dog.
Chris, you there? Hey, Chris? Chris? Hello? Okay, so I don't know. I don't know if I'm paused or Chris is paused or both of us are paused. Somebody tell me. Um, but I'm gonna sit here and wait for Chris to come back. I don't see him here. Let me see if it's me. Chris is okay. Thanks. Um, so I'm gonna wait for Chris to come back. If for some reason he can't, we will reschedule. Or it's funny too, because Chris was telling me that he had told his kids that they may interrupt them. So, it looks like Chris is back. Hey, did we lose you?
Yeah, that was technical difficulties.
Technical difficulties. So, you were in the middle of talking about how, the owner of Dogfish, or Dogfish again, the owner of Flying Dog,
Flying Dog,
who helped you. Yeah, he helped you start the exponential growth of you. Learning all these different people from the industry in Maryland.
Yeah, so I'd ask them to introduce me to people. I'd have those guests on. I would then see who they knew, and then have them introduce me to someone I didn't know, and then it kind of grew my network that way.
Excellent. So, obviously, I've mentioned a couple of times, you really have a good connection of the Maryland industry and what's a lot of the brewers there. It obviously helps that you've been doing it for 5 years plus. So, what are you seeing first of all with the Maryland industry when we are doing this live during the worldwide pandemic of 2020, and so what are you seeing? How are Maryland breweries adapting? Are you seeing any go out of business? What's going on over there?
As far as I know, no one's gone out of business yet. When the tap room closure order first came down, there was, reasonably slow, so a lot of panic. There were a lot of breweries that didn't think they were going to make it, and then the governor made a blanket permission for breweries to start doing home delivery. So in Maryland, a lot of they were always allowed to stay open for to-go orders, which there are a bunch of breweries that are completely flourishing by doing that. And
curbside
then
and all that? They're doing curbside and
a lot of them have set up on their online. They have it set up to do online ordering, and then you just go up and you can let them know, they'll bring it out to you, or you walk up to the counter, you just tell them your name, and they hand it to you, and you walk away. But and there was also in the works that I didn't even know about this, and I had scheduled an episode with one of the employees for the Brewers Association in O'Leary, because I just thought he has a tap room that he sells a lot through, but he also does distribution. So I wanted to get his perspective on how it was going to affect him. So right when the night before we were going to record that episode, I called him and asked him if he would be on. And he's like, it's perfect timing because I'm actually announcing tomorrow that one of his best friends growing up and a small investor in his brewery had written this platform for beer ordering and home delivery. So it's called beerme.com, BIERMI.com.
Yes.
Have you seen it? I think it's in
I've literally
Wisconsin.
I've used it.
Okay, so nice.
No,
that was born from a brewery in Maryland, and it was originally written for True Respite to use to help them. And the couple that own the brewery are just amazing people. And I'm not just saying that because they put my face on a can of beer, but he said that in good conscience there was no way he could keep that for themselves, so they made it available through this time for free to any brewery that wanted to sign up for it.
Wow.
So if a little added self-promotion, I haven't uploaded the audio to it yet, but if you go to the Uncapped Facebook page, I recorded we're calling them liquid lunches. So 2 to 3 days a week, I'll have a beer during lunch and live stream with someone. I had the developer of Beer Me on to talk about how it came about and how quickly they've been developing it.
Excellent. You're going to send me that link and I'm going to promote that.
I should have had the audio uploaded already, but
okay. No worries. This story is fascinating. Yeah. Oh man, that's amazing. Because one of the things I was going to hit you with is after you said, I'll let you go back because I don't know if you finished about what's going on with Maryland beer, but I do need to jump in about Beer Me, is because that's big. That to me has seemed to be one of the biggest hurdles in this transition for breweries is doing the online stuff. And a lot of them weren't prepared. In fact, I would say 90% or something weren't doing online, weren't prepared, didn't have the structure or the bones. So the fact that somebody made it and said, here, this is how we could all survive is, again, a hat tip to them. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Mega props. Mega props.
Yeah. And that like they are. I mean, I don't know Brian. Brian O'Connor is the developer. I don't know him well. I've had one hour conversation with him, and I've emailed with him a bunch. But his best friend Brendan is definitely an all around great guy, and he's been very active in lifting the Maryland craft beer community as along with his own brewery.
And apparently others, because again, this is what someone asked me while you were gone what I was drinking. I'm drinking a Neon Nebula from Ale Asylum, and as I just told Chris, I got this because I was able to. The lady of the house actually was able to order online, and she was out making a run, and she stopped by Ale Asylum after we ordered on the Beer Me app. And she rolled up there and she said it was one of her better experiences so far is doing curbside, because she's just a curbside only lady. So you got to put it in her truck, and that's how she rolls. And I don't care. People roll differently during this, and you can roll how you want. But she rolls that way, and she said it was one of the best experiences that she's had doing this, and she's ready and willing to go again. And I was like, excellent, look at that. So now I don't even have to leave for beer. But the fact that they made the fact that the app and the brewery made it so easy, this stuff needs to be easy and seamless. And if people have any doubts, you almost have to be able to release them. And I'm just here to tell everybody that this beer app and that whole way is just fantastic. I can't say enough about it.
And he has been adding features and fixing bugs just 24/7. He had actually, previous to him coming on, I had a brewery on that uses Beer Me that was like trying to guess whether like maybe he had been furloughed or if he was out of work, because he's so responsive to any time a brewery had a problem, someone has an issue, and it's just that he's working on everything constantly.
Man. So hopefully, I don't know how brewers find out about this or they don't, but hopefully more people can hear about it, because again, it's just I'm blown away. We didn't even talk about this. I didn't know it was coming up in the conversation. And as a person who interviews people all the time, and I was telling you before that I like that I could interview. I like when I do this because I interview interviewers, and you find out a lot about the people that they interview, and the fact that I didn't know about that, and of course you interviewed them, so it was just amazing. So I don't know if was there anything else that you wanted to touch on as far as what Maryland beer looks like right now?
So I mean, look, there's definitely people who are struggling, but Beer Me has definitely helped a lot of breweries, and people in Maryland just must obviously like to drink, because there's actually a couple breweries that are selling more beer now than they did beforehand.
Excellent. And are you seeing a fluctuation in beer prices either way, or are you seeing a demand issue? The reason I ask is because I'm talking shout out to Ale Asylum here. Again, they're one of the regional outside of New Glarus, especially in Madison area, they sell a lot of beer. They're one of the most biggest ones here. I'm not sure. I think in barrels they might be second or third in all of Wisconsin. So they do really well. But the thing that kind of jumped me off about them is that I'm able to buy a 6-pack of their flagship beer, Hopalicious, for $6. And that's pretty much unheard of. And they are a craft beer. When you go to their place, I mean, a glass of Hopalicious is $6, so, or $5.50 or something like that. So, are you are any, because again, that's not a normal price. So I don't know if they're doing it out of, we have a lot of beer to sell, or maybe they're just doing it out of, this is a tough time and we're giving back. I'm not sure. I'm not going to either speculate either way. I don't care. I know that I can go there and get 30 beers for like $37, and that's all I care about, Chris. Yeah. At this time when it's really but also though, I want to support the breweries that we have, and I'm going to get to that next. But have you seen any fluctuation in prices or anything?
I don't think I've really noticed any changes, but I have to be honest, I've never really paid super close attention to what the pricing of beer was. unless it was someone who was an outlier where I just thought they were charging way too much for their beer.
Right.
It, and I feel like some of them have actually lowered their prices down a little bit. So maybe that places that were trying to get a little bit more than what their beer was maybe worth are not selling it for as much anymore. But it seems like for the most part, I haven't seen much of a price change.
Right, because again, and so we have Ale Sound, who, as I said, selling their flagship beer Hopalicious for $6 for $6 on the Beer Me app. So I was like, when I saw that, I was like, whoa! And I like Hopalicious, don't get me wrong, but when compared to other beers, I'd rather probably buy another beer. But if you're gonna put Hopalicious for $6 a 6-pack, I'm gonna drink Hopalicious. It's really, but also, Chris, on the other end, we have Working Draft Beer Company. They are one of the newer ones in Dane County. You probably don't know them; they're really small. But the thing about them is that they have a situation where I don't know, and I don't know the people, so I can't say whether it is or not. But it feels like demand has led them to have a lottery system. So you have to go in, and your name has to get picked. Once your name gets picked, you can pick a time to go and grab beer. And then they have this whole system about how they have this no contact beer thing, and it works out amazing. Yeah. But there's a literally a lottery for you to get into before you can get their beer. So it's just like,
that's crazy.
I'm feeling a bunch of different things here from Madison Beer. And again, I don't know if you're seeing that kind of not craziness, but like interesting things going on with breweries doing interesting things at a very trying and interesting time.
So, I mean, that's definitely one thing about it's almost universal. People who open breweries they're problem solvers. They're nimble, and they're able to adapt as things change. Especially in Maryland, over the last, I'd say it's been 3 to 4 years, the political climate towards brewery laws has changed rapidly. So that helps them stay nimble because they've had to change things around a lot as laws changed. Sorry if that loud ding came through forgot to put my laptop on Do Not Disturb. So I think that's helped a lot of them. And it seems like what I've noticed too is that the smaller the brewery, the better they're doing. Like breweries that don't have a super high output seem to be flourishing right now. Like ones that have been able to build a name for themselves.
Right. Their fans are jumping in and buying their beer. Yeah. If they don't have such a high capacity, they're able to move.
They're just selling. Right. They're selling out of everything.
Right. Whereas Ale Asylum, again, is definitely one of our bigger ones. They have one of the bigger systems. They crank out a lot of Hopalicious and a lot of beer, probably to a lot of bars, which they're not doing now. So yeah, I could see where, again, they probably either have a lot or they just want to brew a lot and say, here, people. Like, I don't feel, again, I don't know them that well, but I don't feel we have a lot of beer, we're trying to get it out. I feel that there's a mix there. Like, yes, we still need to pay these bills here, but also I absolutely feel that there's like a level of like, look, everybody's going through this. So, here's $6 for a 6-pack.
Well, I mean, even like if you look at it in this time when there's definitely still some brewers that are struggling. But everyone I've talked to, they're doing everything they can to keep any employee that relied on income from the brewery to live, keep them employed. So if kind of like if it was someone's second job, they would maybe ask them if it would be okay to furlough them. But most of the places, at least that I've talked to, anyone who relied on the brewery for their income, they've been able to retain them. And then if you look at the other half altogether collaboration project, there's a lot of breweries that are participating that and donating proceeds from the sales of those beers to help. Almost all of them, it goes to the people who work in the hospitality industry.
Right. So I never even thought about that. So what you're saying is that they're basically prioritizing their full-time people, because again, full-time people work at your brewery all the time, and that
Yeah.
means that's their main source of income, just by definition. So then the part-time people, who again generally is a side gig, or you know what I mean. But there are some part-time people who that's their main gig, and then they have other income. So, but you're saying no, that sounds right, and that sounds prudent actually. Cool.
Yeah. And like I haven't talked to any brewery owner that hasn't expressed and I definitely feel they're 100% genuine that they fully care about their employees, and like a lot of them are almost putting their employees first in their concerns about the business.
Amen. So that leads me to the question I've been asking a lot of people who are in the industry or are industry adjacent. I got my terminology right. I used appendage the other day. That was wrong.
It's a little different.
Just a touch. Industry adjacent like yourself. So since you're in contact with a lot of these people, it sounds like you're in contact with them even after, during the pandemic and all that. Can you hit us a couple of tips on how we support our breweries during this time?
So I've actually I've asked this exact question. The number one way is to buy beer. If you need or want to buy beer to drink, because that is not disposable, perishable product. So if they don't sell that beer, it could end up being a huge loss if they have to dump it.
Right.
Which right now, I've seen a couple articles where that's the next big problem, is that there are, I can't remember what the number was, but a huge number of kegs that are sitting and going stale from all the bars and restaurants closed. So the number one way would obviously be to buy beer from them.
Directly, right? Directly.
Yeah, directly. But that's always an area where I feel kind of weird promoting 100% one way or the other, because a lot of, at least in Maryland, a lot of your craft beer stores are privately owned. They're also a small business. So
mom and pop,
if you want to help
mom and pop.
So I mean, they're just as fragile during this time too. Although, from what I understand, any place that sells liquor is doing completely fine, because people are buying liquor left and right, and it's very profitable.
Liquor feels more appropriate during this time. Again, we're beer people, but sometimes liquor is way more appropriate.
Well, if you look, whoops, wrong way. If you look over my shoulder right there, that is a shelf of about 30 or so bottles of liquor.
I'll bring you back to talk about that at another one.
So
do you just say just buy the beer generally though? Period. Like even if it's from a mom and pop or any of that.
Yeah. So I would say ideally, if you have a brewery you love that you want to support, buy it from them directly, because that's obviously the most profitable sale for them. Then I've been told the next best thing is gift cards, because right now just having capital to work with is a godsend. And then obviously buying their merch, if they have t-shirts, hats, and things, is another way to help support them.
Excellent. So I have you answered the question. I had to jump off on something that you said, which is the keg thing. Yeah, that's something that no one's ever thought about. And then it popped up on my feed, or I think somebody posted it in my group, and I was like, oh man. And that led me to think about New Glarus Brewing came out 2 weeks ago and said that they will replace every single keg of New Glarus beer in every bar in Wisconsin when everybody starts up for free. That's it. So
could you?
What is that? Reaction.
Well, I was gonna say the non-snarky comment, which would be that wow, could you imagine how expensive that is for them? That's amazing. But then it may not be completely altruistic, because a lot of contracts with distributors have a buyback clause in it. If like if a distributor buys a keg from a brewery and it doesn't sell, that brewery is obligated to buy it back from the distributor. I mean, they still might be doing something nice. I don't want to throw shade on them, but they also may be contractually obligated to do that.
Sure. So then it's a good PR move to say that, or to try to go the extra, or to say that you're going extra.
Yeah, I mean, I can't fault them for going the PR route, because I mean, they're paying a lot of money to do that.
Right. But I get, yeah. No, this is true. But I guess also too, though, we might have an issue where some breweries aren't coming back, so they can't buy that back.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I see some. I saw some things about. There was actually a piece on CBS that they were talking about. How many craft brewers do we think are going to come back, or how many have expressed, and I don't know, like sometimes I can't, Chris, you probably know this, sometimes it's hard to figure out where these stats come from and where these opinions come from, because again, what are you talking about? Are you talking about coming back in June? Are you talking about coming back next week? Because again, the further you go out, the further more breweries are going to be in peril monetarily wise, period, that end. And it's not just a brewery thing, that's just a business thing. Hell, that's a you and your wife thing. I mean, if your wife's not working, it gets more desperate as we go months later.
And I mean, that's the problem. It could trickle down, is that people might be buying a lot of beer to go now, but I mean, every week, what is it, another, seems like 5 to 10 more million people are unemployed. So at some point, people very much could run out of money.
Right. Well, I mean, even Dogfish Head, Flying Dog, Sam Adams. At some point, you're going to run out of money, and you're not selling beer. It's just these are just economics. It's not even about size at that point. But my friend Mari, she works for a brewery here called Carbon 40. They're one of the better ones and bigger ones in Dane County. And she said she thought it was illegal in Wisconsin buying back. So
it might be. I mean,
yeah, obviously
every state's so different.
Right. But so I think that's probably, if I'm gonna assume for this conversation that Mari's right, because Mari's in the industry and she knows her So if Mari's right, then I guess that is why that made news. But you are correct, and actually that's something that I think a lot of people need to keep in their minds. Hopefully craft beer bar owners who are going to have to deal with this when they come back, which is all those beers are toast now. And basically, because they're not even carbonated, and who knows how, you got to zero all that out and start over again. And especially, 2-3 months in, I mean, that's just not. So it's just really interesting how all that's going to go. So also we got a comment that great points about gift cards and merch, and that's kind of that's kind of what I've been again trying to grab out of you guys, beer adjacent people. Especially you, because again, you're in conversation with them even today. So, and I get scared about these numbers, man. One of the numbers I saw on CBS was like 46%, and I was like, whoa,
it was pretty high.
Yeah, I was like, whoa. We talking about June, May? What are we talking about? So clearly, there are some that aren't even. You said some are really excelling at takeout and all that. Some are struggling.
If it's the same thing I saw, a lot of that was based on a survey sent by the Brewers Association to the breweries. And depending on when they sent that brewery survey out, could definitely affected people's responses. Because like I said, talking to people when this first happened, that first week, and because Maryland was pretty early on in the shutting things down. There were a lot of people talking that convince Leakerton. It's more of like, this is going to be painful, but we're going to survive.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully that survey was early on when people had no idea what was going to happen and just were very pessimistic. And then as things progressed, their outlook was better.
Right. Cheers to that. So I do have a have a question for you. We're gonna kind of steer off of that, and that's my friend Mari again. That's our friend Mari again saying, what are you drinking? And she sent this when you had your technical difficulties.
Oh, okay.
I was sitting here trying to vamp on like this talk while I was like having you come back. So she asked, what are you drinking? So I responded, but I want to know, I want you to tell everybody what you're drinking and the story behind it.
So this is a beer that will come out. It's so hard to try to it's like being in a mirror.
Super Hype Brothers.
Yeah. So this is made by Martin Hattu, Saints Row Brewing down in Rockville, Maryland, which Rockville's right outside of the Beltway, outside of DC. So this is a passion fruit. So you can see the little Goomba is a passion fruit, IPA with vanilla. That is Tony, the owner of the brewery. That is me depicted as Luigi. And then the flag is Saints Row's logo.
Yes.
So unfortunately, like I've had I've been fortunate enough that several breweries have let me come and pretend to be a brewer with them. We originally were going to postpone this beer, but Tony is he's a tiny brewery, and he's been selling out of everything. So he asked me if I would be okay if he went ahead and made this during this time, because he thought it would sell well, and if any indication of the Instagram comments I've received, and because we made glassware for it.
Yes.
The amount of messages I've been receiving about the glassware and the can label, I think he's going to do pretty well on this one. And it's absolutely delicious. This is actually the first one I've drank of it, because I drove down there today to pick them up because he canned them yesterday.
Can I trade you one for a strawberry rhubarb? and he goes out.
Yeah, I could probably make that happen.
Oh, okay.
Oh man, am I back now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right when I asked you, you paused out. I was like,
that's what. Yeah, I gave you a long answer.
Oh man,
you know what?
I haven't been able to con a brewery to make a beer for me yet, but I'm working on it.
Yeah, I've been on a roll lately. Actually, give me a second. I have a couple off to my left, or to my right is my beer fridge. Okay. I can show you the cans of the last couple of collabs I've done, because some of them are pretty cool looking. Yes. So 1 second.
Yes. I am jealous. Again, I actually never have talked to a brewery about doing it, but obviously someone has to make a daddy porter at some point. So someone's going to do it.
So at this point, it's kind of become a running joke that about putting my face on beer cans in Maryland.
Okay.
Because then we have this one. This was a chocolate mousse inspired stout. So this one was made. It was a 3-way collaboration between myself, Idiom Brewing Company, and Saints Row. So that's me, Tony, the owner of Saints Row, in the middle, and then Mike, the owner of Idiom, on the end. And we named it One for All.
Yes.
Then my first love was West Coast IPAs. So this one is called I'm Trying to Nap by Hysteria Brewing Company. So that's me with the boom mic. That's their salesperson and marketing manager, and then that's the brewer sitting up on the corner.
Man.
Then, I'd have to dig
That's
for a little
awesome.
bit to get the other ones, but
No, that's cool. That's cool. That's cool. So you've interviewed.
so I have a couple friends that
Oh no, you go.
I have a couple friends that work at the Guinness Brewery, and they said they're making sure that Guinness is the last brewery in Maryland to not have my face on a can of beer.
Yeah, give me a quick sum up of what do you think of the Barrel House?
It's awesome, and it's a great place.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. My esteemed colleague Doug, he shows up here somewhere on some of these shows. Also, I did a Friday live stream with him. Him and I went, and we enjoyed Heavy Seas as much as we did the Barrel House, actually.
So Heavy Seas is one of Maryland's OGs. That was one of that actually may have been Maryland's first brew pub and then brewery.
Wow. Okay. We had fun there, man. It's really small. Again, it gives a nice contrast to get a Guinness. And I loved it. Don't get me wrong. I love Guinness. It was my second time there. I can't wait to have a third time. It just the contrast of, I always talk about how Guinness is to a lot of people, Guinness is a beer, not a brand. And if you go there, you find out that Guinness is a brand, not just a beer. And because when people say Guinness, they mean the dry stout. They mean, they mean everything that we all know. They don't mean, the apricot, what was it, an apricot IPA or something that they had there, something like that. You know what I mean? Like they're just doing all kinds of different things there. So it's nice.
Well, and they pretty much it's almost like they were Guinness was playing fantasy brew team. It was like they had a fantasy draft and just went around and cherry picked some of the best breweries in the country. So with the brewing team, you can't go wrong.
Well, I heard that they quote stole a brewer from Jolly Pumpkin. That's one of the brewers I know about. So when I heard about that, I was like, oh, okay.
And I wouldn't say stole. I mean,
no, not stole. Right. And that's why I did this.
So there was a lot of connecting between several of the brewers through actually Stone. A lot of them know each other because at some point they worked together either in Estenito or in Richmond at the Stone breweries. Because the brewmaster, he worked for Budweiser for the longest time, and then he worked for Stone. He was actually the guy they sent out to Richmond to build out the Richmond brewery,
which is a beautiful, fantastic, huge.
Yeah, place is ridiculous.
It is absolutely insane, right? Right, but no, and that's what normally, like, what you describe is normally what happens in the industry is that people know everybody, and a lot of times you work at, like, if you're a brewer or if you're a master brewer, generally you worked at a couple other breweries and then you made your own place or somebody hired you or something like that. So you don't just start at the one that you were at. You've made connections, you've moved around with people. Breweries sometimes go under and then the staff goes here and half of it goes here. So it's definitely more of a, like a community thing. I know you know what I mean? Like old school. That's what old school is. Old school is the old networking, and I know you, and you even said, man, you started your whole podcast thing with, talking to the Flying Dog owner or brewer, I think it was, and just having that, exponentially, hey, he knows this guy, he knows this guy. So that's what I meant. But I just meant by stole, like, I didn't really mean that. So I make sure.
Well, I mean it does happen. But
it does happen.
You're talking about Sean. Sean worked for Jolly Pumpkin. He went to Stone for like a year or two. Then he went back to Jolly Pumpkin. And then he went from Jolly Pumpkin to Guinness.
And Jolly Pumpkin is again, they're pretty good. I like them, don't get me wrong. But when I heard that specifically that Guinness was hiring brewers, like him from places like that tells you, in my opinion, they're crafting or they're wanting to be crafting or want to be, you know what I mean? So, like, again, this isn't the dry stout that no one or sweet sour. I'm not sure what to call it or whatever. Anyway, my point is, whatever the designation is, it's not just, they're not obviously messing with that, but it's not about that. It's more about, bringing in different people to see Guinness and to make Guinness a broader thing. So I don't want to get caught up on Guinness, but you took me there, and I forgot that Guinness is I'm from the Midwest. I'm actually from the East Coast. I'm from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. But when you live in the Midwest, with all due respect, sometimes Maryland gets mixed up with DC, gets mixed up with Virginia, and like those are. I mean, obviously they're three.
We all say we're from DC,
right? But you're all like, there's this all. You know what I mean? Like you could probably go from Virginia to Maryland to DC in like 3 seconds if you do it the right way. I would assume. But anyway,
yeah. Well. Now you could, that there isn't any traffic, but typically no, maybe 3 hours.
No way. So as an interviewer, as someone who interviews a lot of people in the brewing industry, do you have a favorite type of guest? Do you have because again, I know you talk to a lot of brewers, and I know you talk to a lot of, we're talking about your latest podcast, which I could show right here, which is very, to me, it's fascinating. Hop Havoc. This guy here, Dylan, Chris was telling me that he basically sources hops and he sells them to smaller brewers. So you don't just talk to brewers, you talk to a whole different, you talk to everybody. So is there a special interview that you like, or somebody that you really like, or is there a segment of the brewing population that you like to talk to more, or it doesn't matter, you just talk to them all? Chris left, or Chris is there.
I'm back.
Okay. Did you even hear my long ass one?
Yeah, I think it was what kind of guests I like.
Yeah, or do you have I have put favorite guests here. I'm just trying to get into the mind of the person who interviews everybody, and you have a different perspective on a lot of these things than even the people who listen to your podcast. So because you interact with these guys before and after, there's pre-production, post-production, all that. So anybody jump off at you, or any hop brewers, they're really cool to talk to, or anything like that?
I don't think I can narrow it down. I mean, it's just that it's the people who are the most passionate, because that comes through instantly. Mm-hmm. They are the easiest people to talk to. Like, I love that moment when I ask them a question and you can just see them, like, they loved being asked that. So it allows me to just go down that road, and makes them more at ease too. Because there was and I think it helps that because I've done this enough and I've just been curious about every aspect of the industry. Mm-hmm. So there was a large brewery that I was interviewing the owners of. And so obviously they had a PR person standing right there. They had a marketing person standing right there. And afterwards, they told me they never had seen the owners open up that much about it and enjoy themselves, because I was asking them questions that they were actually interested in answering. So it's it's just finding someone who's passionate about what they're talking about, mm-hmm. and then being able to like hone in on what they really are and just letting them tell their story. So I guess people who are good storytellers, because it just makes my job easy. I just have to sit back and listen.
I'm telling you, this is why I love this meet my friend vlog that I'm doing. Again, if I'm doing it right, I'm not talking that much, and you're at least telling your story. So, Chris, it's been fantastic and fun talking to you. Is there anything else you want to get out about, whether it be Uncapped, whether it be any Maryland brewers, whether it be telling people about how to stick in there? What you got?
I would people I'm worried about now are actually the associations. So if you look, a lot of like the National Brewers Association, Maryland, we have the Maryland the Brewers Association of Maryland. Mm-hmm. A lot of their funds come from events. and most of them have had to cancel their large events. So that was a huge hit to their budgets.
And they're
Hold
on, let me jump in quick. So just so people know, those events look like generally beer festivals, right?
they're almost exclusively beer festivals.
Okay.
Or like the National Brewers Association, the Brewers, their conference was canceled, but then like they canceled Savor,
and they're about to cancel HomebrewCon.
Yeah, so I mean that's a large portion of those associations' budgets.
Gotcha.
So looking at any way that they're doing to fill that gap is helpful. Like I was on the phone with the Brewers Association of Maryland today, working on ways that I'm going to help them raise funds to hopefully make up some of the money they lost from having to cancel their big event this year.
Gotcha. And you just gave me a guest idea. Thank you. Okay, so so what you're saying is that you believe that so every state has one, generally speaking, mostly
pretty much everyone. I mean, some states even like the local county, some large, like I'm sure San Diego has its own Brewers Association. Gotcha. A lot of them have little local guilds, or definitely at the state level will have an association, and their function is almost always lobbying to try to get. I think the Brewers Association, the national one, was instrumental at getting breweries labeled as essential for them to be able to stay open through all of this.
Gotcha.
And then the local ones are the ones that are fighting to get the laws changed on the state level to be more friendly to breweries.
Right. Or stop infringing on the rights that the brewers already have, which has come up in Wisconsin a couple. Right. So then you're saying go to their website and they'll either be selling T-shirts or they'll be giving gift certificates or they'll be doing something that is like saying, hey, we need some money too.
And a lot of them have like affiliate membership, like memberships that are geared towards consumers. So you can buy one of those, like the Brewers Association definitely does.
Gotcha.
And then there's just I know in a couple states they're doing different things to make up for the lost revenue of events.
Gotcha. And while I have everybody here, Wisconsin, I know for a fact that Wisconsin has one, and I know for a fact that they have a membership because I am a member, and I was a member. I may not still be, but I need to look, and if I am, I'm going to re-up. So that's a great tip, Chris. Thanks for that.
Welcome.
So anyway, anything else you want to get out, Chris? We still got time. I'm not running anywhere.
There was something else. So were you planning on going to the Beer Now conference this year? Down in Austin?
I was planning to go to Fresh Fest, which is the same weekend.
Oh, is it? Guess yet again, I don't get to go to Fresh Fest.
Right. Well, Chris,
every year it's something, because I had already I was making it a work trip to go to the Beer Now conference. Never even looked on the calendar to see that it overlapped, because it's like every year there's been something that I had to go to that I still haven't made it to Fresh Fest.
Right, and I don't know if you're familiar with one of the festivals that's near me, which is the Great Taste of the Midwest, and it's one of the biggest ones in America. In fact, it's the biggest beer fest put on by a private group in America, actually, and they are the same. It was the same week as Fresh Fest and BBC, and they have now canceled. So
okay,
that's why. And then I don't know if you saw BBC put. I don't know if it was in a public group or it was in a private group. They are starting to ask.
It was in the private group.
Yeah, they're starting to ask the questions that it sounds like they may postpone or may have. Well, they're asking what kind of if we're available to have it, will you guys come? Is basically what they're asking.
Yeah.
So so I don't know. the selfish side of me says that I want to cancel because you guys put 3 of my biggest hit damn beer events in 1 year. All 3 of them are one freaking weekend. Are you
It's
serious?
not fair.
No, it's not. So like, I can understand if there was 2 because then I can like finagle one and get to the other. You know what I'm saying? And then I miss one. But if you put 3, Chris, on one, you put 3, Chris, on one damn day, I can only make one. Yes, it's all about me, and yes, I'm being selfish. But
yeah, oh, I mean, gotta look out for number one.
Come on, there are 56 weeks. Come on, folks.
Have you been to Fresh Fest?
I was there last year for the first time, and it was just amazing, Chris. It's something that I think everybody should explore and everybody should go to. And the best part about it was there was many good things about it. Most of the beer that they bring there are collaborations. So
yeah,
you can get 1 or 2 beers that like a brewery has, but generally what they feature are the collaborations, and these collaborations are top notch. They were all very well brewed beers. So it's not like you're going to a beer festival and having like, you know how sometimes this goes where the brewer just brings, with all due respect, sometimes they just bring
the
like
cheap stuff.
Right. Or like the stuff they got to get rid of, or sometimes like old stuff, or like, you know what I mean? They're not really like bringing, like this is top notch. I didn't have a bad beer there, Chris, and that says a lot. I didn't have a bad beer. I had a beer that I didn't like. That's not a bad beer. I just didn't like it. That's not, it doesn't mean bad. I didn't have like an infected beer or a beer that like was, too overcarbonated or anything. It was just an amazing beer festival from that aspect. So I tell all beer people, like, if you can, please. But if it's going to go up against Beer Now, I mean, I understand, like, ugh. So Beer Now, man, I love when you guys went. Anybody hear me? June was amazing. June was an amazing time for that. Please go to June.
Well, I had talked to someone else, someone that lives down in Austin, and they're like, I don't know what the hell they're thinking. Austin is one of the last places you want to be in August.
I heard that numerous times too. So I don't know, man. Beer Now, maybe they were just planning on everybody's hiding in breweries all weekend, which is not a problem.
Yeah.
But sometimes you want to, sometimes people don't just want to be in breweries; they want to actually see what Austin has to offer. And I'll probably be one of them because I've never been there and I heard nothing but good things. So, no, you were thinking about Beer Now though before we kind of got off on the tangent.
I was just going to ask you what your opinion of that was, whether you would still go, or if
yes, or now or COVID.
Yeah. Are you still going to go to Pittsburgh? Yeah,
I don't think so. I really don't.
That's like I have fairly bad asthma, so I'm convinced that I'll die if I catch it.
Yes. So you're high risk. Yes.
So it's definitely in my thought process. So if in August I'm going to want to get on a plane.
I know, but at the same time, Chris, we're going to be. Because again, you're a podcasting guy and you're a beer guy, so that translates to me that you're a social guy and you like to be in places with other people and you like to go to breweries and stuff. So
this is driving me insane.
Right. So, but with that being said, it's driving you insane, but not insane enough for you to try to get on a plane. So yeah, it's just too soon.
Pretty much.
It's really too soon for me, and I just really hope they all cancel in a selfish way so that we could all just reboot. Honestly, my opinion, people don't agree with me, but can we just trash 2020 and get to 2021? And that's kind of how I feel about the rest of the year.
Skip.
Right. Let's hit skip, but like let's keep as many people as we can on the planet and around us at the same time.
Yeah,
it's like
I had the opportunity to interview Mike Potter, one of the founders of Fresh Fest, before the first one. He was a great guy.
Yes, you partially put this on my radar. You did.
Okay.
No, you did, because again, I remember that, and I also remember seeing. I got the thing, like I knew Fresh Fest was going to happen like the week before the first one, and in the Midwest I was like, oh, next year I'm definitely going. So when it came around next year, and then Beer Now was the same week, I was like, I have to go to Fresh Fest. So yeah. Oh no, Beer Now wasn't. I went to Montana last year. It was amazing. But But now it's the same weekend. Now it's just like this year was like I have to go to Fresh Fest because it was so amazing. But yes, I remember that. You interviewed them before the first one. Yeah.
I couldn't get excited about going to Montana.
Oh man, the story goes. I don't know if you heard my story about Montana, but like I was not going to Montana. I was not going. What happened was I ended up late, and the plane tickets were horrifyingly bad. And I don't know, I was just like, fuck it, I'm not gonna go. Like shit, I was pissed. And then the lady was like, why aren't you going? That's your thing. Those are your people. That's your jam. And I was like, because I don't want to go and I don't want to take a plane and do all this mess. She's like, so why don't you drive? And I was like, what? So I looked and it was like 20 hours. So I'm like, you want me to drive? Sorry, you want a black man to drive through North Dakota, South Dakota?
That's a long time.
Right, all right. And she's like, yeah, who cares? Come on, man. Like, who cares? What are you doing? So long story short, I listened to her and I took the road trip, and it was one of my favorite road trips ever. I wouldn't give back my Montana trip at all. I absolutely love Montana. I love the beer. I love both. Awesome. I can't tell you enough about how I was with you. I was like, I don't really want to go to Montana. And then once I went to Montana, I was like, oh my God, this is so amazing. If I would have missed this, I wouldn't have known what I missed, obviously. But I wouldn't have I love Montana, man. It's one of my favorite places in America. No bullshit. It's crazy. But I was like you, man. I was like, fuck it. Fuck Montana. But the way they put that together, how everything came about, and then I took my little beer tour on the way home. It was amazing, Chris. I can't say
that's awesome.
Yeah, so I'm with you, man. But like from Maryland, Montana.
No, and the biggest deciding factor for me was that it was in June, smack dab in the end of the school year, and my wife is a teacher, and that would be a real jerk move of me to dip out and say, hey, by the way, just you're responsible for the kids 100% during one of your busiest times of the year.
Right. And that's partially, I bet your beer now kind of moves off of June because of that too. Because you weren't the only one who would have a potential conflict with the school. Because I think we have a couple school teachers, actually. I know Dan Booby's a school teacher from Minneapolis. And he missed that. He missed Montana because of that. So, I don't know. Scheduling's hard, man. I'm not even trying to go there at the People Up Beer now. Scheduling's not easy. So they do the best they can. That's
possible.
Yeah. And they do the best they can. So cheers to them. And again, it's a great conference, and we wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't for that conference, because that's how we met.
Yeah. It was my first one, and it was great. I don't think there's anyone that goes to those conferences that I wouldn't want to be friends with. It's just an amazing group of people. Pretty much.
And I finally got around to, getting some content from all my cool friends that I meet there. Because again, all you guys are doing great jobs, and I'm just accenting them at this point. So that's my my appendage part of this is, accenting and getting the word out of all the stuff that you guys do. So Chris, fantastic, man. Before we got on, I said, yeah, man, we'll be like 20 minutes, and an hour and 20 minutes later. Thanks for giving me your time today. Thanks for your support of breweries. Thanks for all that.
Yeah, thank you. It was fun.
Cheers, man. I'll talk to you soon. And I'm trying to have many of the guests that I have on now back after we get out of this pandemic. And I like to see, to tell for you to tell us what's going on with Maryland beer, how many survived, what's going on, are we back? So we'll talk after this pandemic, whenever that is, if you don't mind.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'm game.
All right, man. So like I said, anything last about? So we go to Uncapped Podcast, and then we can find you on Facebook and IG, Uncapped with No Way.
Yep. Yeah, and I usually add every link to every episode on the uncappedpodcast.com. So that's a good place to just see everything.
Yeah, and I know we have some people in Maryland. So if you guys are in Maryland and you're a podcast person and you're not listening to Chris, you need to get with it, because it's great. So cheers. Thank you, buddy.
Cheers.
So another fantastic interview. Chris is, again, if you're not in Maryland, and if you're or even in Maryland, Virginia, DC, as we said, hell, Delaware, Southern Pennsylvania, get on Chris's podcast. He talks to people around that region. He talks to brewers around that region. Get on his website. Check him out. He's definitely, in my opinion, an authority on, what the hell's going on with Maryland beer. So it's doing great. So tonight, he's doing great. So tonight we have Brian Weltzbacher. Probably got that name wrong. He can tell me about how I got his name wrong tonight. Beer is okay from Oklahoma. We're going to pretty much have the same conversation with him that we have with Chris. Oklahoma beer, what's going on? How can we support? Who's doing well? Who's not? All that things. Also, Brian is an excellent graphic designer, and he has great merch. We'll go through all that in about 4 hours. So I will see you guys then. And then Brothers in Booze this Friday with Vernon Gibbs and his new book that he's got. And I'm going to get on him about why he doesn't use a calendar. And we'll probably talk about top sheets or something like that too. So, all right, guys, I'll see you in 4 hours with Brian and Doug, I believe. Cheers.